An order has been issued to extend voting hours until 8 p.m. across Harris County's 782 polling locations. Anyone in line after 7 p.m. will need to vote on a provisional ballot. Anyone that's standing in line at 7 p.m. will vote a regular ballot. Voters will cast their ballot as normal, but place their paper voter record in a sealed provisional ballot envelope instead of inserting it into the scanning machine. All provisional ballots will be tabulated separately inside our central count station here at NRG. Today included a handful of late starts at various polling locations, most significantly at Baker Ripley locational navigation. The additional hour provides voters with the opportunity to cast their ballot if they were unable to do so as intended this morning. We are reviewing the circumstances surrounding these late starts and will provide more information as soon as available. The early voting results will be posted after the polls close at 8 p.m. tonight. I'll take any questions you may have.
What kind of impact will this have?
So our initial projections was that we would start the early voting tabulation at 7 p.m., that the judges would be able to close their polling locations by 8 p.m. and get those results to us by 9 p.m. So in effect, what happens is we're seeing at least an hour delay in the judges closing their polling locations and then getting those results to us here. So we'll release the early voting results at 8 p.m. and then as soon as the election night results start coming in, we will then start processing those election night results. We will of course have to process the provisional ballots that were cast at those locations separately from the regular ballots. Yes, the processing provisional ballots takes a bit longer than a normal ballot because there's what we call a qualifying process. We have to ensure that the voter that actually cast a provisional ballot was in fact registered to vote, and it should be, as they are selecting themselves in the poll book, or the clerks are checking them in the poll book. And then we have to go through the process of separating the provisional document from the ballot to then scan the ballot into the scanners.
Can you talk to us a little bit, and this is why I showed ABC 13. We're live on ABC 13 right now. Can you explain to the voters the difference between if you stand in line at 7, you cast a regular ballot, but if you like just drive up after 7, you get a different line. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, so what our judges currently do is when the polls close at 7 p.m., they place a clerk at the end of the line. So anyone who's standing in line at 7 p.m., a clerk is placed behind them. And then, so for these voters that come up after 7 p.m., they will get behind that clerk. And then the judges would know that anyone that's coming in behind that clerk will actually have to vote a provisional ballot. So the provisional votes themselves don't have to be cured in the normal sense that we know of curing ballots. But what that means is, as those votes are tabulated, if by chance that court's order is challenged and the court then, another court says that we can't actually count those ballots, then we know exactly where those ballots are. We know how they were counted. We know where they were tabulated on their separate V drive. I'm just simply, that's the process for why the provisionals are tabulated separately from the original ballots. Give me 1 second. Yes, say that again?
So by the end of the night, whenever you come and tell us the count, you wouldn't be counting the provisional ballots?
So, yes, during the night, we are going to count those provisional ballots. And then the question that you've asked is, when do I add them into the totals? And I'll be working with our county attorney to ensure that we're following the judge's order properly so that we get those votes added into the totals.
We're hearing from a lot of voters who say that the polling locations have run out of paper. Can you speak about that and why these locations weren't properly stocked?
So we're receiving requests from some of the polling locations that indicate that they are running out of paper. And we've taken a look at our projections and at the allocations that were made. We know that we sent out a certain amount of stock to the polling locations with the supplies, and we know that we also provided judges with extra paper when they came to pick up their supplies on Saturday and Sunday. So we're assessing what's actually going on here. We're not sure, so I don't want to speculate, but I have staff in the field at this very moment that's delivering paper to any location that's requested. We've been delivering paper throughout the day, and we should see that that's not an issue for voters standing in line to cast a ballot.
How many locations right now are either out of paper or running low on paper?
So we are aware that there's at least 12 to 17 locations that initially requested additional paper. We have, to my records, I know that we've provided at least paper to 5 of those locations, and I'm assessing now whether we've gotten paper to those other 12. And those are 12, those are numbers that were provided to the court, so I'm checking on that. No, the county does not have a shortage of paper.
How big of a deal is this provisional ballot situation? I mean, is this a huge thing or no? Or how would you sort of put it in perspective?
So we process provisional ballots on a nightly basis anyway. So we know that there's voters who show up that are not on the voter roll, or they've moved from one county to our county. They've moved from out of state to in-state, and they aren't registered, or they haven't been here in the timely process to cast an original ballot. So they vote a provisional, and we process provisionals through the United itself. So for these particular set of provisionals, what we anticipate is that these people that will get in line after 7 p.m. are registered voters, and that we will process them as an extended hours voter versus having to do any other type of provisional ballot processing.
Your office told us earlier today that it would probably be around 2 a.m. before we got a full count with this delay, and now these provisional ballots. What does the timeline look like now?
Yes, the extension of the polling hours will in fact delay the release of what we believe to be the final results, the final preliminary results tonight.
When you guesstimate, when time?
It's hard to say. So if we're going to again release the preliminary results for early voting at 8 p.m., then we're hoping for the next results at 9 p.m. And then as those results continue rolling in, we'll continue releasing on the hourly basis. So, and if we're lucky and those 782 get themselves all into us by midnight, then we'll be reading V drives from midnight until we get them all completed. Yes, the election workers will be paid for the additional hours of work.
We heard that 21 of 24 machines were down here at the Energy Arena site. Voting machines, do you have an update on that?
So what we know is that one of the controllers has gone down, which is what caused that number of machines, duos, to stop working. And we've deployed our controllers out to other locations who had a similar type of controller issue. So right now we're processing those voters in line on I believe there's 20 duos that are actually working and 10 that are down, I believe.
How would you kind of sum up the day as it's been so far? You've had issues, but of course you're expecting some issues.
So I think that's a great question. And I think that all of you that have had a chance to talk with me know that I'm a pragmatist. So I'm going to give it to you the way I see it. Overall, we've had a very good day. And I say that because we opened 782 locations. And 750 of those locations didn't have any issues at all. And voters were able to vote at those 750 locations and cast their ballot. So we're talking about a handful of polling locations, and a handful is a lot. I'm not trying to downplay that, but a handful of voting locations weren't able to successfully process our voters as we intended for them to be processed. For a sundry of reasons, they didn't open at 7 a.m., and we're looking into that. And for a number of reasons, some of the polling places have exceeded expectations as it relates to the amount of paper that we supplied to them. And the response to that is to provide those locations with the paper that they need in a timely fashion. And so for me, my response is to assess how we responded to those issues. And assessing those issues then allows us to correct those issues. Now, that doesn't make the voter that was standing in line at 7 a.m. waiting to cast the ballot feel any better in that moment. But what I can assure the voters is that we will review and we will build and we will improve on the process. That's my focus, that's my goal, that's our staff's focus, And that's what we will commit to do to this process, for this process.
Got to pull you, but any more urgent
I
questions?
was just wondering, what's the situation with the poll watchers? How many we have here? And because state law recently changed in for future elections with those poll watchers, right, or whatever, how's that affected?
So we do have a number of poll watchers that have signed in here at NRG, and we understand as we were out in the field, we saw a number of poll watchers at the polling locations, and I have not seen any issues, or nor have I had our judges report any issues with the poll watchers who are there. I think the poll watchers are serving a valuable part of the process. The poll watchers here are observing to make sure that they understand the process that we're going through, and they're documenting the process to ensure that we're doing the process as we've indicated we're doing the process. And I believe, as I'm seeing the process, that those poll watchers are going to report that we followed our processes and procedures.
All right, look, we got it.
To the voters that are frustrated, I mean, a lot of people are just saying they had to wait hours. One person called it an American that we talked to that said this is happening. A lot of people are just really upset, even though it was a relatively small number of votes. Just speak to them directly.
So to our voters who were inconvenienced, I spoke to a voter at Baker Ripley. He was in line at 6:45. He came back and voted at 11:50. And he said it was my responsibility to make sure that I was able to cast my ballot. I said to him, it's my responsibility to make sure that you can cast your ballot accurately and that your ballot will be counted. And so the court has assessed and has supported our efforts to ensure that a voter gets to count their ballot properly by extending the polling places for 1 hour. We did not object to that. We understood that. The folks that brought the action, we spoke to them and said, we understand that. We're not objecting. We want every voter to cast a ballot. We want every voter to cast a ballot accurately, and we want to count every voter's ballot. So I say to our voters, know that what occurred today is nothing nefarious. What occurred today were some mistakes that were perhaps made by our judges. Judges are our friends. Judges are our neighbors. Judges arise at 4:30 a.m. in the morning to take on this task that we charge them to do. Sometimes machines don't work properly. We're going to talk to our vendor about what we're seeing with these machines. We're going to look at our processes and procedures, and where there's room for change, we will make change. And so I assure the voters, they should not be disconcerted. They should not determined to turn away from the democratic process. This is what we have, and it's a good system, and the country is in a good place.
Okay.
Thank you.